Go ahead, Greg.
Good morning, Council and Mr. Chairman. Today is Safety at Dams is issue is permission to request award of or approval of modification number 1 to the Crow Dam Spillway Area 3 project. This project was the capping point on getting major modifications done to the spillway at Crow Dam. Area 2, the lower half of the spillway, was constructed a couple of years ago, and Area 3, the upper spillway, completed the full functionality of the spillway. This modification is incorporating several elements of work that included both dealing with the complexities of the project, as well as the challenges of the COVID era when it came to labor shortages and the pandemic itself, as well as just the overall nature of the work and also the stage 2 fire restrictions that did have a bearing on the work production. Trevor Brass put together slides that are included in Tribal Council packet, and I think it would be beneficial just to go through the slides a little bit and have Trevor, bring up any anecdotal information that kind of identifies the challenges that both the contractor faced, as well as our staff that spent long hours, definitely Monday through Saturday work hours throughout this entire project that spanned close to 18 months.
Yeah, morning, Council. I'm Trevor Brass, Engineer 1. I work under Greg at the Safety of Dams. Yeah, and like Greg said, I was out there inspecting for the entirety of the project. We figured we'd go through a little slideshow. I think you've all been out there, possibly, but this slideshow gives a good recap of the project.
Trevor, you're going to have to use that little screen share green button on the bottom of your Zoom meeting. I can share this if you want me to share. See that little green button where it says screen share?
Yep.
And then now open up, there you go.
All right, now you can see it?
Yeah.
Okay. I would go through the slideshow, and then we'll go through the mod. So let me go back. So engineer of record was Stantec for the spillway, and DJNA was for the spillway bridge. The contractor was Big Sky Civil Constructors and Montana Civil Constructors, performing as a joint venture. So this is before construction. This is the old spillway that was in place, rather dilapidated. Reservoir restriction was put in place due to the condition of this spillway, and the reservoir restriction was in place since 2006. We started out with demolition and excavation. You can see demo of the existing spillway, tunnel, and then excavation on the left there. Construction started in April 2020.
Hey, Trevor, was there any classic souvenirs you could say with some of that concrete art?
Yeah, I have one in the office.
Yeah, I wondered that. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of the rebar was square rebar, which, they built it, what was it, the 30s? So, yeah, it was pretty neat to see that. But
Still pretty good condition, actually.
yeah, it was actually harder to tear out than you'd expect. Rather well built for back then. So structural concrete, roughly 7,000 cubic yards of concrete. And just to give you an idea, SKQ dam contains 85,000 cubic yards. You know, roughly a year and a half, 2 years to place all this concrete rebar, all this construction. Like Greg said, 5 to 6 days a week, sometimes 12-hour, 13-hour days. So you can see their batch plants on the left here, automated. A lot of the materials came from this area, cement, aggregate, sand. You can see we're placing a slab here. On the left here, they're using they call it a telebelt, which just conveyors the concrete into a chute, which then comes down into our prepared slab containing 2 mats of rebar. You know, we're vibrating the concrete, we're finishing the concrete, screeding. Takes an operation for sure. Usually our slabs would take at least half a day, if not more. And then the finishing of the slabs would take sometimes overnight. So the finishers would still be there long into the night. So here's our walls. You know, you can see we're inside on the right here. They're having to use the telebelt again to discharge the concrete inside. Very tight quarters, very hard work. A lot of work to lift this vibrator up and down. Having to tie off to rebar when we're not on the scaffolding. Yeah, very complex operation. Like it says down here, you know, at the bottom we're 5 foot 6 inches wide. Then we transition up to 18 inches at the top, and our tallest walls are 30 feet tall. This is a piano key weir. This always gets comments when people go out to the site. Now, how come it's like that? So the building of it was very difficult. You know, more so than the walls or slabs. Very tight quarters, unusual shapes. The difficulty was getting all of this concrete consolidated properly. You know, just all the tight corners, very difficult. And then these slabs on the right here, very steep slabs with very little, I guess, you know, room to work. You can see all these guys up here, they're raking up concrete because it keeps falling when they're vibrating it, screeding it. And then the contractor put together a little conveyor for the finishers to ride up and down some I don't know what you call it, some paths here, metal path. Anyways, cold weather was a constant struggle. Just cold weather in general makes concrete work 2 to 3 times more difficult. Keeping it proper temperature to cure properly, you know, as long, you know, finishing, keeping it proper temperature, you know, it's just a struggle to keep everything proper temperatures and yeah.
Greg, I noticed last week on social media, everybody was posting that there was a minor earthquake here in the valley. Did our systems pick that up?
Yes, yes, and the folks from FIP assisted in going out to the dams to do an inspection, which is a protocol for earthquakes.
Was there any impacts to the project here when tremors like that happen?
So far, no. No, but that is definitely one thing that we have on our radar in working with Montana Bureau of Mines and Geology as part of their annual agreement is ensuring that we have all the instrumentation functioning to ensure that we pick up these earthquakes, and they can be of any size, but we still have to address them as still going out to inspect the dams.
So means to keep our concrete at temperature, we used ground heating coils, space heaters, thermal blankets, and tents. Some reinforcing steel. Our walls, slabs were all double mat. Sometimes 1.5 inch down to 3/4 inch diameter rebar. 6-inch spacing. Roughly 550 tons of rebar. We have a drainage system underneath the concrete. You can see that the piping here has holes perforated in the bottom to allow seepage to be collected and then transported to a discharge. There's double filter drain material around the pipe. PVC water stop at every joint of the concrete. You can see labor getting ready to weld a piece together here on the right. And then you can see it suspended here within our walls and slab connections on the left. Concrete joint preparation. Every joint, besides the slip joints, were roughened to create a good bond between concrete surfaces. This is a sandblaster that shoots sand at the concrete and roughens the surface. Then over here they're using bush hammers, roughening the surface. Backfill. You can see they're using sheep's foot roller, walk behind roller, dozer. They're using excavators, all types of means of backfilling material. And this was all originally excavated material. We screened it at the stockpile area and then placed it back in place for backfill. Typically, we had a pretty consistent crew of 4 to 5 guys with the backfill crew. Here's the bridge placement. Utilized 2 cranes, one 220 ton and one 40 ton cranes to place 4 basically beams to create the spillway bridge. We had a decent amount of concrete repair. Generally, we would need concrete repair where the concrete was not consolidated correctly. So there's rock pockets and just concrete that is not satisfactory. So we'd have to take that out, prep the surface, and then prepare it for new concrete or new grout. This is probably our largest repair that we had. Turned out rather well.
And just a clarification on our concrete repairs such as this. These are important enough that we prepare non-conformance reports that identify the issue, corrective measures, and also final signature after the repairs are done. And this is one of several nonconformance reports that were prepared as part of this project. So we want to ensure that the contractor made the appropriate repairs under the correct guidelines for repairs before we would eventually get to a point of final completion. And so that is just part of the overall documentation that we maintain in our system.
Terry?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is, how do you let out bids on this? How does a contractor be able to, and how close do they come to their bid, or do they just, or is there a bid actually, you just select a contractor? And then my second question is, are they bonded for how many years afterwards, that if we have some defaults with this?
First question, as part of the bids, we request that the contractor submits a list of similar types of projects, as well as references that we can contact. So we do a check and balance on, is this contractor, do they have the experience necessary for this particular work? And for these dam projects, it's under a classification called heavy civil construction. And so these contractors are made aware of that. They provide us in their bid past projects and reference checks. So between myself and Trevor, there was a lot of contacts being made. And I would say we have a 2-page questionnaire on various elements between contractually, workforce, to actually, was that particular reference satisfied with the work product? Were there any issues during construction? So we do a lot of background check to ensure that we can recommend that particular contractor to do this work. As far as the second question, our contracts have a 1-year guarantee to correct any deficiencies that are found after final completion. And so that has been a standard, to use a 1-year agreement. There are different places that actually may have longer time frame. I've seen some that are 2-year warranties, but for right now, it's a 1 year.
Thank you. I just, west of Dixon, about 3 miles, they redid the highway there. And now there are signs that says dip. Well, there's about a half a dozen dips there. And when you're hauling heavy loads and stuff, that's, it's an issue, but I just think the fill that they use, they're obviously sunk and they didn't use proper. So, but they are able to get away with it, and now we're stuck with a bad road there.
I'm nodding. I've driven that road. I know exactly what you're talking about, and that's one of the challenges, I guess, that I can understand the different types of construction and the highway department having their own set of standards and how they deal with warranty like that. Apparently, either it wasn't addressed or it should have been, but I know we want to maintain a proactiveness with our contracts to ensure that we get repairs done.
Greg, can we just start requiring a 2-year warranty on all of our contracts, including that in our bid?
I think that would be something we definitely need to consider and work with legal on. I would say this day and age, there's a need to go longer than 1 year, in my opinion. The question is,
We may not get bidders if we do that, though, right?
that is possible. I would say that in part, it's a question on what a contractor has for bonding and insurance to cover that 2 years and what that cost is. To say, is the industry still supporting that? that would be another question, but definitely something we should entertain.
Okay, and another question. On these projects, are these contractors purchasing our gravel resources?
Not yet. Right now, I am working with, Jace Smith and Scott Johnston to put together a list of materials that we would typically need for projects. And then working with tribal lands on what we can do to reestablish tribal pits to provide that product.
All right, thanks, Greg.
Some drone shots of the finished product.
What's the volume that's supposed to pass?
About 14,000 CFS, cubic feet per second. The original spillway was limited to approximately 10,000 cubic feet per second, mainly due to the tunnel. That amount of water is looked at as, let's say, a roughly 10,000 year storm event that the watershed north and up Crow could produce. It's hard to imagine, but we are following the guidelines of the BIA's Safety of Dams Handbook that is generally following other industry standards for what we have to design around for this day and age.
I'm not sure what to design for anymore with climate change, you know?
Yes. One could say it is definitely a robust build, but in part the build is containing the flows that are anticipated during a flood, but it's also built to withstand certain seismic loadings. So there's that balance between capacity of flow versus structural integrity to withstand, again, probably climate change and seismic conditions that have been occurring over the last couple of decades.
Just one question about those I-beams for the bridge. Do you know where they came from?
Billings. Can't recall the company.
At first I thought I knew it, but I don't.
Yeah.
They'll probably come to me tonight, but
Just trivia.
yeah.
When it was part of Tech coal up in Canada or not. That's what they use that coal for, is making structural beams like that.
Yeah, they were one of the only, I think there's maybe 2 companies in Montana that do pre-stressed beams like that. Yeah. There was a visit by Secretary Deb Haaland. There's a picture of it.
Yeah, I think some council members were there, but this visit occurred about 6 weeks after completion of the project. So one could say plenty of time, but it was still, a short time frame.
Just some bullet points. 2-year project, total cost 12.8 million. Tribal workforce wages. Linda, did you have some things to present on that?
Yeah, so we had a total, across all of the contractors, the prime and the subcontractors, of over $1.5 million gross wages paid to CSKT members and members of other tribes that were on the project. For percentage-wise, for the entire project, we hit 73.76% for tribal hours. Part of Trevor's presentation. He was talking about the heavy equipment operators. We did 88.41% on heavy equipment operators, and we would have been at 100% if we had any tribal member crane operators. So all the non-tribal hours for those heavy equipment operators were crane operators. And they had 2 crane operators out there. So SKC, I don't know, I was there at a meeting last week and I don't know if they're gonna do any crane operator training, so, but they've looked into it, so I think he'd said that since all the cranes are different, it's kind of hard to train people. So, the truck drivers, we were at 100%, so that's like, the articulated truck drivers and stuff like that, Class A CDL people. Laborers, so that includes the carpenters, laborers, the finishers, and the iron workers. We were at 63.36%. And that's kind of that's, I guess, low. I would say we're kind of lacking in tribal member iron workers, carpenters. So we've kind of been talking about getting some training opportunities with the funding that we have for the water. So hopefully we can get that going. Maybe we can get those numbers up. I know we don't have any, we did have like a little, economic development had a building trades training that they did over at SKC a few weeks ago. So just something to think about. We're doing really well with the heavy equipment and the truck driving, but we do need carpenters with like at least 3 years of experience. That was kind of what the contractor was looking for. Across industry standards, that's kind of what they want, is at least 5 years minimum experience. So iron workers, we did have a few tribal member iron workers. They were members of other tribes, but we did have a few, so that was really good. Those numbers held up pretty good across the project. So
Yeah, Lynn, go ahead.
So in a project like this, we also assess a 3% fee, correct?
yeah, so there was a 3% fee on this project, and I can't remember the exact dollar amount, but it was pretty big.
And where does that funding go? Does it go right back to the general fund?
Yeah, I
or-
believe it goes back to the general fund.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of just thinking out loud. I think that should probably turn back into your program there, so we can start looking at other training opportunities, not
Yeah.
only for yourself, but for the workforce.
Yeah, the only training that we offer right now through Indian Preference is our annual flagger training and CPR. And so, but we do pretty good with that. We get a lot of flaggers certified, and we get them out on the job. So we're gonna be having those classes probably January, February this coming year, so that they can start working on the highway that's going through Ronan.
Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Greg, how much did engineering and design cost on this project?
One thing I did not have listed at the moment, but on the construction support side, Stantec, the engineer of record, their original scope of work and dollar value was, I would say, around $700,000. Then we did one modification for adding a little time to their contract that was, I think, $150,000. So let's say, $850,000. And there's some old school rule of thumb as far as construction oversight being 15% of the total construction cost. that was the old school. I haven't revisited to see what real numbers are nowadays, but I'd say that we negotiated down from their original scope to get down to the $700,000, but even with the $150,000 adder, I think that combined dollar value was still below their original starting request, and I want to say that was about $1 million. So we still go through a lot of negotiation to ensure that we're keeping costs down, because it's easy to have a large budget and then blow it and then come back for more money. So myself and also Dan Lozar were of the same opinion. It's like, we've been in that game, so we're trying to ensure that we get what we need. And I would say, for the benefit of council, is that it's because we have Trevor that has that experience that took a lot of scope away from Stantec that wasn't needed. My contribution was just from construction management in essence, and not giving it away to others to, I guess, provide services for our projects when they don't really have a good understanding of the project. And so I guess the Safety of Dams program, I believe, has the capacity now, and we'll need to grow a little bit because of all the workload, but I think we have the capacity and the experience to take on more from consultants up to a point. Obviously, when it comes to planning and design, they're definitely still going to be needed, but we definitely have a good crew. When it comes to the tribal construction side, I would say that the tribal workforce that we saw out at Crow were exceptional, and I'd say that is something that we hope that we can use on other projects, and it's that helps complete a project that is desired based on the plans and specifications. That knowledge base for the design is one thing. The knowledge base and experience on construction is a whole nother valuable asset that the tribes, I think, have, and hopefully we can grow. Thank you, Trevor. Well, and I guess as far as questions, we've been going through questions as things arise. I would say is based on our tribal council request to approve this modification 1, are there any other questions?
Any questions from council? No, I think we're asking them as you're going along, so. Oh, go ahead, Len.
Yeah, just, Greg, just in the future, I'm really gonna be advocating that our departments, such as your program and tribal lands, work closer together, so we are starting to utilize all of our tribal resources. All right, well, let me take that back. That we're requiring all of our contractors to utilize all of our tribal resources in regards to gravel and backfilling and all of that stuff. Everything that they need needs to be bought from the tribe. So we'll strive for that in the future. I know we don't have the gravel pits ready yet, but we'll get there. So.
That's how I say it, yes.
Yeah, and I just want to thank you guys for your hard work. Hey, those are very complex jobs that you guys are doing out there, and a lot of risk, So we're very fortunate to have people like you overseeing these kind of projects. So appreciate your work.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Ditto. Okay, what do you need from us then?
Approval of modification 1 to the joint venture contract for Crow Dam Spillway Area 3.
Motion by Len to approve the budget mod. Seconded by Mike. Any further discussion? Go ahead, Terry.
I'm still trying to imagine what the chairman talked about if we have a big snow year and we have a big melt off. That material that dam sits around, it's clay based and some sand there. But we've taken into account that it will withstand that amount of water come down. I used to live down at Perma and just up the drawaways, and our furnace quit, so I went back to Dixon to stay with my folks. Next day went down and it snowed I think it was probably in March, and it all melted and came down and took out the highway. There was a culvert there just at the bridge at Perma. It was probably about 6-7 feet tall. And it was clear across the river, shot clear across. But when those big events happen, those big melt-offs, there's a lot of water coming down. And so it would be wise to inspect that constantly when those big runoffs come down there, to watch for washing and stuff around the edges of that facility. It's possible and has happened. I know down here at Mission Creek there, Charlotte Moe's, they're going across. Well, and that water came down there, it just took that whole culvert and it rode out. And so the chairman talks about, climate change, and it can go both ways certain years. So just a concern.
Yes, thank you. That is part of the protocol when we start having floods, is to go out and inspect the dams and the facilities to ensure that there's nothing unusual happen. So that is a protocol under the safety of dams process.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Terry. We have a motion and a second. Call for a vote. All those in favor, show of hands. Unanimous.
Thank you, Council.
Just one other comment,
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman. I also want to acknowledge Melinda and your hard work. You've gotten a lot of people to work, and I know up here in council, we get complaints because they're not working. But I explained to them that sometimes you're just a one-woman show out there, and you're doing what you can, and we appreciate your hard work. We really do. So thank you for all that you do.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So as we think about the future and what we could do with the college, how we can get some vocational training, I mean, it's imperative that you provide input for that and meet those needs that are there in these contracts. Yeah.
It is hard. I think Job Corps had filled the void with like the building trades and stuff, and now with it gone, there needs to be something there. We do have like they can go, I think, to the University of Montana, or they can do like apprenticeships and stuff, but I don't think people really want to leave. They'd rather stay here and try to get training. So if we can think of anything, yeah. So if anyone has any ideas or anything, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've tried to point out the obvious to the college.
Yeah. And it is hard. I think it was really hard to get an instructor for the one that economic development did. So that it's hard to get people to come in and do like the instruction part. And so hopefully we'll find a way though.
Oh, it's definitely a challenge. So
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for your work. Go ahead, Terry.
Thank you. I've often thought, like on these kind of projects, if there was a list of loggers, tribal member loggers, that some of those guys are quite skilled. And if they would just get a flyer sent to them, noting them that these projects are coming up, or this project's coming up, and if they have the skill sets to please step in.
Yeah. So with this particular project, we were really fortunate. We got some notice ahead of time, and they provided us with job descriptions for all of the positions that they were looking for. We advertised them for, I think, 2 weeks in a Charcusta. And I think later on we put another little advertisement in the Charcusta. And usually we don't have that kind of notice. There's a lot, of times where we just get the call like 3 days before the project's going to start. So we were really fortunate with this project that we were able to get the word out and actually advertise the jobs for people to come in and hand in their resumes and stuff like that. So, hopefully in the future going forward, we can do the same with the other projects. Greg's been really good about working with me with the whole Crow Dam thing since I've been here. I wasn't here in the start of the first phase, but with the second phase, things have gone a lot smoother with the way that we've been recruiting people and stuff like that. So, and a lot of it is word of mouth. The employees go home and tell their friends and family, like they're looking for people. So,
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Trevor. I know you guys are working hard on all of it, so. Thank you. Go ahead, Jen.
I say we'll take a quick break and I'll let these guys set up.
Okay,
And
let's
I
do that.
let legal know that they'd be on about 11:45.
Okay. Break. Cat Herder says break. 15-minute break? No. 5 minutes at best. All right, let's get going. Sorry. We're having our own special meeting up here. Let's include you. All right. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, not yet, good afternoon, but I'll try to be done before that. Quick introductions, Ryan Powell, Heritage Program Manager with the Flathead National Forest.
Nice to see everybody again. Tammy McKenzie, and this week I am the acting Deputy Forest Supervisor.
Good morning, everybody. Katie McDonald, TIPO from Preservation.
So of course, we have seen a lot of you last week, so I appreciate you coming and entertaining the idea of me coming back and doing a presentation again. I wanted to do a presentation. I have recently done this presentation for both culture committees on Holland Lake Lodge, a project that's ongoing that we are currently doing analysis on. And Martin was attending and actually asked that I requested that we give this presentation in front of council, which I thought was a great idea. So I have no problem doing that. So I wanted to provide that to you today. I will try to be as brief as possible, but it'll probably be 20 minutes. But would like you to feel free to raise your hand, voice, just say something if you have a question. It's a process. It's an ongoing process. So, and it's a changing process by the day for this project. So
Thank you, Ryan.
I'll do my best.
Everybody has my permission to interrupt and ask questions anytime you want to. Can you get to it?
Okay, I can see it on my screen. Can you?
Jen might have to tell you.
Go back to your Zoom.
My Zoom?
Right there, see that green share button?
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And then you're able. There you go. Yep. There you go.
How's that look? Perfect. So we've been working on this Holland Lake Lodge expansion project it's been ongoing for at least a year and a half, but it's finally made the realm made it far enough along in the process that we're including soliciting public comment, and we're actually going out and doing our analysis. So I wanted to brief everybody about that project and how we're complying heritage-wise with the applicable laws that we need to consult. So, picture, just to get you a little bit of a reference. Holland Lake, if anybody has ever been there, lies in the Swan Valley. You're right here at this view. You're looking at the backside of the Mission Mountains. If you were to go directly straight in front of you, over those mountains, you'd probably end up in about the Nine Pipe area refuge. And so just to give you kind of a bit of an orientation where we are, not too far from the Sealy Divide. Outline, we do a quick project overview, how we're dealing with the heritage process, and then what's to come. And the reason that I am presenting in here is because the CSKT will be a signatory on an MOA that's associated with our heritage process. Okay, so what is Holland Lake Lodge? It's a privately owned guest lodge operating on a Forest Service property under a special use permit. The lodge has been in operation since 1924. I believe in 2016, the current lodge owner, whose name is Christian Wolfile, listed the lodge for sale. And so it's a private business. He listed so he owns all the structures that are there on public land. So he listed that property for the business side of and the structures for sale in 2016. Entertained a few suitors who were interested in it, but finally decided on somebody in 2021 who wanted to partner with him. And this partner was called, their name is the Powder Corporation, so Powder. That's a Utah-based adventure lifestyle company. They run several ski resorts throughout the nation, as well as some other facilities, whitewater rafting, skateboard parks, things of that nature, kind of that adventure lifestyle. So in partnering with Holland Lake Lodge, part of that change in ownership was going to involve the change of a special use permit, which basically kicks off a bunch of different processes within the Forest Service that we have to reissue that permit. Part of that reissuing that permit is to do an analysis on things that are changing. They did work with the owner to develop a master development plan on what things they would like to change out at the lodge that would make their business a little more sustainable that they want to take over. That process is, of course, subject to applicable laws, National Historic Preservation Act, as well as the National Environmental Policy Act. So we're currently going through those analysis right now. The original public scoping period for this project was September 1st through October 7th. And just wanted to make a point that official government to government consultation with the CSKT has no time limit on that. So our consultation with CSKT is open throughout the duration of the process until the decision is signed.
Ryan, can I ask a question about the special use permit? Is that a term permit? Or Tammy?
Yeah, that permit is for 25 years. And it was reissued in 2017. So if it were to change ownership and be reissued, this would be, there's two ways you could do it. You could transfer the existing, so there'd be the remainder of that, or you could do a new one.
What happens if it's not renewed?
Technically, if it's not renewed, then the owners would be responsible for removing the buildings from the property and returning it back to its somewhat natural state.
But if the buildings are protected under historic protection, how do you remove the building?
Yeah, that gets complicated. Maybe Ryan has a better answer to that.
Yeah, I would be going through the same process that we're going through now, because part of the proposal is removing several of those older buildings that are actually out there and constructing new buildings. So it would go through the same process that we're going through here, where how to assess the impacts that's going to be on the historic site. There's a way to do it, a way to do just about anything. We just have to go through the process.
Terry?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Reuse permit, how many acres?
So the current permit is for 10.53 acres and 10.53.
10.5.
And the master development plan being proposed by Powder is for 15 acres. So they're requesting an addition in acreage to what's existing.
Okay, thank you.
And that new addition will include some of the wastewater treatment facilities, which I'll show you a map in just a little bit. So as I mentioned, consultation with CSKT will be ongoing until the decision is signed. As far as the timeline goes, the Forest Service was hoping to initially have a decision in the spring of 2023, and that would give us this winter to conduct our analysis. So I consider part of my analysis was presenting to those culture committees to kind of gauge their reactions and, you know, solicit comment from them as what their thoughts were on the project and how it's going to impact CSKT in general. On the right side of the screen is just a quick map showing where the project actually sits, just south of the community of Condon. So the expansion that was proposed in the master development plan is going to result in a significant increase in guest capacity, which will include parking infrastructure, things of support infrastructure that's going to support that population, construction of new buildings, and removal of some of those historic buildings.
So Ryan, when you say significant, what does that mean? What's the head count?
Current capacity, I believe, is 56 per night. That's heads on beds that they can, that's full occupancy for them now. The new proposal, I believe, is just about triple that, would be about 100. Oh, okay, not quite triple that, so about 140 something guest occupancy.
Is there audience of higher economic income? Is this more like up the Blackfoot with the pause up kind of scenario, or what?
Go ahead, Tammy. Tammy can probably speak better.
So the proposal is to increase, they want to do a substantial investment into the existing, some of the existing lodge and some of the other existing buildings, and then they have a proposal for new construction of some cabins and a second lodge. And in order to make that profitable over time, they want to do a few things: increase capacity and increase the duration of season that they currently operate. So offering at least a portion of that, more year-round, maybe not completely year-round, maybe. And with that, also trying to keep the prices similar to where they're at now. So roughly, and I think on average, it's $300 and some per person per night.
Have they approached you for other special use permits like helicopter skiing or anything like that as far as those attributes?
They haven't, no. The likelihood of any kind of helicopter skiing in that area is really low due to recommended wilderness and wilderness areas. So, but no, they have not.
I believe they did express some interest in possibly being a campground concessionaire. Right next to the Holland Lake Lodge is a Forest Service owned campground, and we do go through a concessionaire to run that campground.
They haven't mentioned anything about snowmobiling then?
No, they haven't mentioned snowmobiling at this time. In fact, they seem to be leaning towards anti-motorized use, so no jet skis, boats, snowmobiles. I do think once in passing, they did mention it would be great to see more cross-country skiing around here. So there is maybe some potential for that kind of request in the future, or utilization of that somewhere down there in the future, but nothing official.
So a quick synopsis of what is actually changing out there, and this is all available through our public scoping package that should have went out. And if anyone's got questions, I believe it's still available online, that you can actually review the master development plan itself, as well as our scoping package and how we're planning on doing our analysis. So the significant high points of what they want to change out there: removal of what they term dilapidated structures. These are structures, not all of them date to 1924. In fact, only one of the buildings out there is of that age. The original lodge was burnt down in 1947 and reconstructed. So there is one building from 1925, and the remainder of the cabins kind of have an age range from 1940 to 1965-ish. So but those structures in their minds are dilapidated, have received very little maintenance, and if they wanted to continue into the shoulder season to operate out of those buildings, would not be insulated or function well in the colder seasons. There's also repair of existing structures, such as the historic lodge that you'll see pictures of here in a little bit. Construction of several new buildings, including a lodge, welcome center, a restaurant, additional lake cabins or new lake cabins, some studio cabins, some employee housing, and all the support structures that go along with that. Also planning on upgrading infrastructure, including water, wastewater, electrical, parking, and non-motorized boat docks. Of course, with all that new construction, there's going to be a little bit of vegetation management, tree removal for new construction, and also making that space a little more defensible from a wildfire scenario.
What's trail construction?
So trail construction would be tying the lodge itself into I believe it's called the East Side Connector Trail, which connects to the, I'll show you a picture. In
Going
just
up
a
to the
little
Bob?
bit. Right there, the main trail that goes into the Bob right there.
Yeah, and just to be clear, the proposal to expand the parking area for the trailhead there is actually a Forest Service proposal, not a powder proposal, just tied into the same scoping.
Then various amounts of land disturbance within that permitted area, including some berming that will kind of shield visitors' views of employee housing, drilling 2 potential new wells, and numerous utilities that will be installed out
Is
there.
the wastewater system right now out of compliance?
The wastewater system right now is in compliance, and the pond inspection does appear to have the capacity to take on the higher limit or the higher per night occupancy. That's why at this time, I don't think they're looking at managing the wastewater system, because I think it's going to be adequate as is.
Just to give you, this is pulled directly from the master development plan. Existing on the left, you can see the barn and a few other significant residences like the owner's residence and the lodge and the gift shop, with a variety of about 5 cabins, I believe, versus what the expansion proposal is on the right-hand side with a significant new lodge, a significant sized restaurant that is attached. I don't know if you can see my cursor, a restaurant that is attached by breezeway to the existing historic lodge. This would be the new Bob Marshall Lodge, plus the lakeside cabins, and then what they refer to as some studio cabins or bunkies. Significant parking to support it with some employee housing, support facilities, maintenance buildings. This would be your existing barn that's still sitting out here.
What are your visual standards there for that portion of the forest on the lake?
Because this is an MA7, which is a designated recreation area, the visual standards aren't actually, they're not a high visual standard. So as far as setbacks and tree removal requirements, we'd have to follow, they would have to follow DEQ setbacks, which I believe are around 50 feet. Then as far as tree removal goes, there's not much that would preclude them from removing some of that vegetation.
I'm glad I brought Tammy with me.
Sorry, Ryan.
That's fine. Again, this is from their development plan, basically some artist renderings of how that perspective is going to change once the expansion is implemented, if it is implemented. With the current view up on above and kind of the proposed, you can kind of see this would be the new lodge style. Again, they would probably be sticking with what's called the Adirondack style architecture with all their new construction that would tie in closely with the existing lodge.
Would the Forest Service have any standards for building materials for fire prevention?
Yeah, we would make a recommendation as far as building materials go based on Firewise standards. And then also a few things that we could put in there as design features for a visual standpoint, such as the type of reflective glass they use in the window, so it's not as, not as glaring from the lake. So there would probably be a few of those things as well.
And I believe there would be standards in place for dark skies, so downward facing lights, so that people aren't experiencing a vast number of lights, once dusk hits. This would be the proposed waterfront view from somebody recreating on the lake. Existing lodge up on the top with the historic lodge here on the left. And these are the existing lake cabins that would be proposed to be removed, where the new lodge would be constructed along with some lake view cabins here. This would be the welcome center here.
So they're expanding their linear footprint along the lake.
They would be, yes.
How does that change the value of their lease or their agreement?
Well, we'd have to analyze for that. We have not approved nor analyzed for that additional acreage request yet, so that will be part of our process.
Tommy, you did ask a little bit about wastewater, and this is the current setup. The wastewater is actually, nothing is held in tanks there at the grounds of Holland Lake Lodge. All waste is pumped up via pipeline up to the holding ponds that are up here. Uphill from that, and I believe that system is actually shared with the campground, the established campground, which is right here, just to the left of the lodge. So I believe they would be conducting analysis to determine whether or not that existing wastewater system would support their proposed expansion, and if it does not support that expansion, I would assume that they would take on the responsibilities of upgrading that system so that it does.
Chair.
Sorry, Terry, go ahead.
Thank you. At this time, public access, is that the only access right there that's privately monitored, or is there other access to the public?
So there is a Forest Service campground adjacent to this that has 40-some sites, I believe, in it. And a day use area, a group site, and a boat launch. And then the entire backside of the lake is also Forest Service owned with rec residence cabins on it. So those are not the land is publicly accessible, the buildings are not.
So I don't believe that there is any privately held land on the lakeshore of Holland Lake.
Is there any fish in the lake?
Absolutely, yeah, there is fish. I don't know that it's known as one of the better fisheries, but it is definitely a fishery, and there are definitely concerns with significant species of fish and how they would be impacted. Bull trout probably being the main fish of concern out there.
I know that location is a great place to soak your feet after a 30-mile hike out of the bob.
And we mentioned the trailhead expansion, that's outlined in red right here. This is this is one of the main arteries of getting into the Bob Marshall Wilderness. This is the Eastport connector, comes straight kind of west or east off of that. And this is a very popular trail that goes up to Holland Lake Falls. So this, this site right here is constantly pretty much at full capacity. There's rarely a time that you can go there and be the only vehicle in that parking lot. So expansion of that facility would be Forest Service wise, and that would be expanding the parking lot a little bit and basically turning the single SST toilet facility into a double. So how are we dealing this with through heritage process, what we term the Section 106 process? So everyone's quite familiar with the NEPA terminology and how we're going through the NEPA analysis, but there's a parallel process for heritage concerns through NHPA, the National Historic Preservation Act, and that's the Section 106 process. Knowing that the site was going in actively, we had a request from the owner as far as how potential buyers might be able to change the site, and the site was never recorded as a historic site. So we said, first and foremost, that site needs to be recorded so that we have the foundation and we can basically analyze what the impacts are going to be to that foundational site. So they contracted a third-party contractor to record the site. It was recommended as an eligible site historically due to the age of the facility and the significance of it being associated with kind of the early 20s and 30s Dude Ranch era that was really catered to tourism, a budding tourism industry in the Forest Service lands. So it was recommended eligible. We reviewed those recommendations and made those forward those recommendations on to the Montana State Historic Preservation Office, who concurred with those determinations. And at the same time, we started talking with our counterparts about our CSKT Tribal Historic Preservation staff in May doing our program-to-program consultation, at which time Katie said she did express some interest in the project and wanted to be involved, although we didn't know what and how those impacts were going to come to fruition. she had the foresight to at least know that, yeah, this is something that we would like to be involved in. So just expressing that interest kind of led us down this path. So the proposed changes, how we're analyzing the proposed changes, since it is an eligible site and they are planning on removing buildings and significantly altering that landscape, we're going to go through the route, what's called an adverse effect, and that's a Section 106 term. And as part of that adverse effect, it requires us to negotiate basically, and that negotiation is a memorandum of agreement or an MOA.
Go ahead, Terry.
Thank you. I was just curious, I'm assuming you probably had some public discussion. What's kind of percentage lean towards no and towards yes?
Firmly 99% lean towards no.
I thought maybe did I skip over? I thought I had discussed somewhere. We have had 3 public meetings, 2 in the Condon area, 1 at Sealy Lake, and they were well attended. Well over 100 visitors from the public attending and voicing opinion. And like Tammy said, I would say it's probably a 99% ratio of people that do oppose the expansion at this scale. So why does this concern CSKT? As of now, and we have intensively surveyed the grounds of the APE, or where the actual area of that permit that they're planning to expand in. We have done archaeological survey, and there's been no pre-contact Native American type sites recorded in that area, in that APE. But we do know in the surrounding area, there's definitely significant archaeological interest and CSKT interest. In the nearby community of Condon is one of our best culturally modified tree sites, which I threw a picture in. And we know that it's a well-known travel corridor through Holland Lake, and we know there's several place names, you know, in talking with the various, with both culture committees, we do know there's significant places that have place names there in the Holland area. So we know that there's significant cultural ties as a landscape, not necessarily as some type of physical manifestation such as, you know, the scarred trees, but there's more of a cultural landscape there. And so part of our analysis is determining how is that going to be impacted by this expansion. How do we move forward? Through an adverse effect, as I mentioned earlier, we will be discussing and negotiating an MOA, which is a binding document that stipulates the responsibilities of all parties involved in the undertaking and resolving. The purpose of an MOA is to basically resolve the adverse effect so that it's not determined adverse anymore. Well, this is a significant change at this proposal, so we are currently working, and that's why I'm working with Katie's office as well, and reaching out to CSKT to see what kind of, you often hear them referred to as mitigations. You know, what kind of mitigations can we do out there at the site to offset the impact that this expansion is going to have? Some of the historic ones are a little easier to determine than, you know, the relevance of the impacts to CSKT in general and the cultural landscape in general. So I mentioned it's kind of a balancing act, and it's even more complicated when all the buildings, we don't own the buildings, it's their buildings, it's their business. And so the MOA will be a negotiation between the Forest Service, CSKT will be a signatory on there, and Powder, the corporation, and Holland Lake Lodge, as well as Montana State Historic Preservation Office. So it'll be a balancing act between all those agencies to determine this is how we see adequate resolution of the adverse effect. So that is what we're working through now. Again, Flathead National Forest take lead on facilitating that MOA. So how to provide feedback or request more project information basically would be just to contact either filter those comments, and what I proposed to both culture committees is that I'd ask that those comments filter through Katie's office, because that provides a direct line for those comments to come up through us and directly to the decision makers in the projects, and not just get kind of lost. And we have a public facing website where the public was able to provide comments, and I believe the final number of comments was somewhere in the neighborhood of 6,500 comments. So we don't want significant comments to be watered down within those other comments, you know, or we will go through all 6,500 of those comments and address them. But, you know, when they filter through Katie's office, or if they filter directly to us coming from CSKT as a result of consultation, those kind of automatically rise to the top, that we can make sure that those are going to be addressed. So again, I put Katie's contact info and Mike on there, but feel free to reach out directly to myself or anybody at the Flathead National Forest. Tammy McKenzie. I have Shelley Maver on here. She's our project manager on the Swan Lake Ranger District. She would be a great contact as well. Or we still have a public facing website that discusses everything going on with this project that is still available through this website. And I believe that was it for the presentation.
Well, thanks, Ryan.
No
Okay.
problem. Thank you for taking the time to listen. And
It's yeah, it's a very concerning development, you know. I mean, one thing, you know, we own property over there by condo. What's nice about that area is it really hasn't been affected by all the people moving here. And so, you know, it is concerning to think that this project would triple the visitation at that particular site in that historic dude ranch. And what does that bring for more attraction to that area? So, you know, the cumulative effects of this may seem, maybe by the proponent, minimal, but from the outside, it may be huge and very unfortunate. But I don't know what else to say. That wish they weren't doing it. Why can't they just keep it the same? You know. But Tammy.
Yeah, so just kind of where we're at with the process and how we're going to move forward from here. There's been a lot of conversations about if we are going to move forward with the project, and if we do, what that would look like. So in full transparency, I can say that we will not be moving forward with what is proposed. We are going to be requesting that they reduce the impact, reduce the, you know, construction and overnight capacity, and come back to us with a new proposal. There is still potential that we might deny it altogether, so that's still part of our conversation as well. But that's kind of, you know, that's where we're at right now. And I would guess in the next few weeks, we will be providing feedback to them with that information.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from council? You build it and they will come.
so I didn't want the council to be caught off guard when we come to you with an MOA. I just would like you to know that we are working with Katie's office and the right people to try to go through this process the correct way.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Katie.
Yeah, I also wanted to leave it open if there were any questions from council directly to myself or our office of how we've been handling the earlier conversations is really what we've been having. In the previous years with late Tony Incashola Sr., he showed immediate interest and had asked me to make sure that, you know, we got involved and got part of the conversation of what's really going on out there. So I've been working with Ryan for the past almost 60 years. Very respectable guy. He really keeps in high consideration what CSKT would like to see in Aboriginal territories. So like Tammy was mentioning, there's a lot of opportunities for myself to even come to council and continue these conversations of which direction we would like to take, what more involvement we would also like to take, whether it's on an archaeological standpoint or just going and visiting the landscape as well. So always open to field visits as well. It's nice to be able to stand there and imagine what's going on when you're standing there, so.
Appreciate that, Katie. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you guys' time.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Good to see you guys again.
Yeah, good to
You
see you
too.
again. Thank you for letting us in the door.
Yep, I don't know, it sounds like a field trip to me. I haven't been to Holland Lake Lodge since 1979. It is, it was nice then.
Great campground there too. I do have a printed copy if you like it.
Drive safe.
Legal wanted to go into executive.
Okay, executive session, so be it.